All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another Crunch Chats here on the Crunch's Facebook Live page. Great to have everyone along today as we go a little bit back through memory lane. It's another one of these alumni editions of these Crunch Chats as we go back a couple of years. Obviously, in a normal year right now, it would be Calder Cup Finals in the American Hockey League here in early, almost mid-June at this point. A couple of years ago, the Crunch were in the midst of a Calder Cup Finals as they were taking on the Grand Rapids Griffins, and we're bringing back a couple of key members of that group from 2017. We'll go around and start in the top left there. We've got the Eddie Shore Award winner that season, defenseman Matt Taormina. Looking at the bottom left, the captain of the Crunch that year, at least towards the end of the year and during the playoffs, Erik Condra. The bottom right, it was a guy who was acquired in March, a goaltender throughout the playoffs for the Crunch, McKenna. And then, of course, in the top right, the guy calling all the action throughout the course of that year in his final year with the Crunch organization, Dan Duva. Gentlemen, welcome to a Crunch Chat. It's great to have all you here.
Fantastic.
Hi,
Thanks for having us.
Hello, Syracuse.
Well, this is exciting. This is a fun one. We've had a couple of these now, these alumni meetings, I guess, and they've been fun. I guess we'll go around the room first before we kind of dive into everything and just see where everyone is and what everyone's doing these days as everyone's in, I guess, different stages of these things. We'll start with Matt again at the top left there. How are you doing? Where are you? What's going on with you these days?
I'm good. I'm here in Michigan. We just started to open up a little bit now, but really, I retired last year, so I had this whole year off and just tried to figure out what to do, and just gonna all this stuff happen, and we'll figure it out after that. But no, we're doing fine here.
Well, it's good to hear. Definitely a weird moment at right now, at least for all of us. Erik Condra, where are you? You were in Colorado this last year with the Colorado Eagles, and where are you these days, and how are things?
Yeah, I'm actually in Minneapolis, South Minneapolis. That's where I live. So at the heart of what's going on in the world today. And we've seen a lot of crazy things, obviously. We're a few miles away from where it all went down. So, crazy times here, COVID, and then everything that happened here. So it's a different world we live in, and hopefully things change for the better. But the season I was in Colorado with the Eagles last year, had a great time, beautiful out there, and like the Crunch season, we got cut a little short. So sad, but trying to enjoy as much of the summer as you can.
Yeah, Minneapolis definitely the center of what seems to be a very changing world all of a sudden with everything that's going on, and hopefully it's changing for the better moving forward. Mike McKenna, we'll go to you next. It's hard to tell where you are because of the background you've got on your Zoom, which is just tremendous. But how are you, and where are you these days?
Yeah, this was the best one. There's another with me and the Sicilian soundbite that I might bring up in the middle of this thing. I'm in St. Louis right now during the pause. Ended up actually getting to work with Dan this season with the Vegas Golden Knights. Retired prior to this season. And made my way out there. So I've kind of been shuttling back and forth, been working the majority of games for Vegas as their TV analyst, growing in that role, learning how to do it, sleeping on Dan's couch, learning about all his tales of deliveries from back home in Jersey, and listening to endless amounts of Springsteen with him. So yeah, it's been a fun year, but this pause has been pretty wild, like, as I'm sure, like, Conj, you're probably the same boat, man. Like, e-learning with kids is not fun for us. Like, our first grader who's now going into second was tough to motivate her. So I think we're all learning a lot about ourselves right now during this.
For sure, no doubt. Learning as teachers and everything, it's a crazy time to be, I guess, a parent these days and have so many different responsibilities to take on. Well, we'll get to your, I guess, your broadcast partner these days now, Dan Duva. We can tell you're in Vegas. You were saying before it, you're not normally here or there in Vegas at this time of the year, but I guess I kind of ruined the question. But tell us about Vegas and how are you?
Yeah, no, that's not a casino or anything over my shoulder. That's St. John's, right, Mike? That's
sure.
Game 2.
Yeah, yes, that's would have been what game was that when we won the series? One of them, but yeah. St. John's in playoffs.
That was game 2 because we lost game 1. That was game 2 was It was Taormina to McGinn in overtime, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And then the last couple of games of that series at home. Yeah, it's Las Vegas. It's hot. Yeah, it was a couple years ago that the Golden Knights had lost Game 5, June 7th, and I was on a plane June 8th back east. So it's hot here. If things are trending well, might head back east for a little bit, 4th of July and stuff before the NHL gets going. We'll see, but it's going well. I mean, that's a nice background, Mike, but I mean, there are only 2 people on this Zoom chat who have actual microphones for this. It's you and Lukas, so we know who the real broadcasters are.
Oh, you're just hiding somewhere, Dan. I know you've got a whole bookcase full of them hiding.
Well, it's great to have you all here. Like we said, we've got the live chat going on Facebook right now. So if anyone here on the stream has questions throughout the course of the show, feel free to send them in. We'll get to them throughout the course of the evening here. But like we said, I mean, you all are connected through the 2017 playoff run for the Crunch, which was a magical spring for this group, and came a couple games short, as we know. But that was a heck of a run for the Crunch. I guess we can kind of dive into that season now and just get the overall impressions of what that group was like. And Mike, you weren't there from start to finish, but you were there through the end of it. But a couple of these guys were there from day one. As that season was progressing, obviously we know where it ended. But what are the memories of that whole year and of the group from start to finish? I guess Matt, we'll start with your thoughts on that year.
Yeah, I think we had a really tight-knit group, and we worked really well. We came from a different coach, so I think we kind of gelled from that, rallying around Ben Grew and stuff, or from Ben Grew. He's a tougher coach, and so I think we banded together really well, and I think you can see from the way that we played, how fast we were, how aggressive and stuff that we were. We really, I thought, took control of a lot of games and stuff like that. So it was a great year. It came down, to the last couple games, but throughout that, we, off the ice, we were a close knit group, and the community has always been a tight knit group there. So it's always made it a lot easier to play and a lot more fun to play there. So yeah, we're just those 2 games, but it was fun. We all had, these other 2 guys can attest of, when you're winning and moving on, you're having a lot more fun, and it definitely, it was a lot of fun. So
it's a party after every round.
Yeah,
it really is, man. Like you're so happy to be moving on, and usually you'd have a couple days. I mean, you know what though? We didn't.
A lot of time between, because we did fairly well.
We did, but remember though the series when we beat the Marlies, and we were on a bus the next day to Providence.
Yeah,
like that was a grind. That was an oddball, because usually there's a couple days between series.
Yeah, well, it was a week between the first round and the second.
Yeah, that's what,
Syracuse and Toronto won their opening round series in 5 games, but the other series went longer. So both Syracuse and Toronto had to wait.
Mm-hmm.
What's the dynamic then of that, of the difference? Does it affect the rhythm? Do you like to have a couple of days or a week to kind of I don't know about wallowing in the victories or anything like that, but what's the difference of going between one series where you kind of have to snap right back at it a day or 2 later for a new series, or having a week to kind of enjoy it and then get refocused?
I'll go out of the 3 of us here, we're the oldest guys on the team. A little bit of time in between games definitely helped, because you're usually not practicing too much. You're just trying to get ready. There's things here you tweak, but most of the time it's just getting rest. So I know Condra, me, and a lot of other guys were pretty banged up that entire playoff. So we definitely needed that time, and it helped out. Trust me, it helps.
Yeah, I think a week long is tough. A week long, because there's only so many days you can take a breath, and then you enjoy it with your teammates and come together again. And then once you start practicing hard in the middle of playoffs to get ready for the next round, that's when it's a little bit too long, and then you start. It's almost like you're not ready for that next round. I'd say 3 or 4 days in between is perfect. From going from Game 7 in Toronto, or was it at home? We won against Toronto.
At home.
Yeah, it was at home. Going right to Providence the next day, that was a little bit much. But the week long is not good either. There's always a sweet spot.
Oh.
What's funny about that is my family and I were in P.L. LeBlanc's place. We overtook his lease when I got traded into town. Well, that lease ran through the night of Game 7 against the Marlies. So we were either moving on or going home. Like, that was it. Well, we win, and then we find out we got to be on the bus the next morning at like 8 a.m. to Providence. And we're like maybe a half of the way packed out of this house with 2 kids. So like, I remember I got Wally to come over. Daniel Walcott comes over at like 7 a.m. with the pickup truck, and we tossed everything we could in the back, put it in a storage shed. I was on the bus at 8, slept the whole way to Providence. Like, just remember the scramble it was, even just trying to get like pre-scout done for that.
Yeah, and then when we got there, we couldn't even practice at Dunkin' Donuts Center because they had like graduation or something.
Yeah. Right. With 3 national anthems, I'm sure, at the graduation, like the games too. Let's find a way to make a mockery out of this. Let's have 3 anthems.
We were walking to the game, and the graduates were still walking out. Like, they were trying to change the ice there for graduation as we're walking the game 2 hours before. They're still trying to shuffle kids out of there. Like, all right, how are they getting these
It's playoffs, and we're kicking out the high schoolers.
The other thing that comes to mind in that regard, guys, is, obviously, Matt, you were, with the team, but it was your second tour of duty. By then, you've been back with the Crunch for a couple of years. Mike, we mentioned that, you'd come over in a trade in March. And Erik, it was your first time in Syracuse. You had started the season in Syracuse, but I counted you went up and back 4 times to Tampa and back to Syracuse. I mean, that's just throws another wrinkle into the kind of crazy season that it was. And then, on top of it all, you find yourself as a captain of a team that you were, barely at some points in time, you were barely a part of.
Yeah, it was a crazy year. It was a little bit of a tough year, especially for my family wise. I was on a one-way deal in Tampa, so I thought I was going to be there. I had a house there, and I got sent down out of camp. And I think I was up and down 14 times that year, actually. But that was a crazy year for Tampa because they had I don't know if you know exactly, there was like 11 or 12 guys that were called up that year, up and down at least. Like, everybody got a shot up there that year. And I think that's what ended up helping us. Everyone had confidence coming back down. But yeah, with 2 little kids living in Tampa, and I had this big house out in Baldwinsville that I was living at just in case they would come out and visit me. It was a crazy year in that regard. They would come out, and I remember they flew out. My wife flew out with 2 kids on a layover somewhere and flew into Syracuse at 2 p.m. And at 10 o'clock at night, Julian had called me and I was getting called up the next day. So we were back on a flight back to Tampa. And then Luke never came back down. He got called up. And then
except for when he did the shoveling thing, right?
Oh, man.
That was unbelievable.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks left in the season, but I don't know, maybe it was a month or something. Ben came up to me. He's like, all right, I don't think Luke's ever coming back. Do you want to be the captain or not? I was like, okay, sure, let's do this. We got a good team. Let's make a run for this. And then, yeah, like you said, the only time we saw Luke again was a couple of games left in the regular season, or was it in playoffs that he came and shoveled the ice? I don't think it was playoffs.
Like one of the last home regular seasons.
Yeah, I think it was regular season. Last.
Yeah, I'd never met him before. I was at the bench getting a drink of water, and I had to move off the boards so he could go past me with the shovel. And I thought, who is this guy? Like, he looks like a lumberjack. And the boys are howling on the bench. And like the moment we got in afterwards, like, can you believe he did it? So I was kind of clued in late to it, but that was unbelievable.
Yeah. Because, Erik, I ask you that because I remember pretty early in the season, again, you had been in the NHL. I mean, I think is today the anniversary of Binghamton winning the Calder Cup in 2011? It
was a couple of days ago, yeah.
No, pretty close, right? So,
yeah.
Like you had, success in the American League, but you'd been in the NHL for a while. And I just remember it was pretty early in the season, and you and I didn't really know each other. We, mutual people, but I think it must have been a Sunday because I'd gone to a coffee shop after church and we were both there. And I just remember thinking like, boy, it's got to be tough to be in the American League when you've been in the NHL for so long. But then talking with you, like there was not even a shred of disappointment or, woe is me. Like you just, you of course you want to be in the NHL, but I think that, like you and like Matt, of course, was an alternate captain too. But like that to me was a big part of the leadership, that approach and just kind of a love of the game, which I don't know. You tell me. It seems to me like that kind of stuff can take a team a long way. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what's funny is, I mean, Matt maybe can attest this, and McKenna too. Like, it's more fun hockey-wise to play in the AHL sometimes than it is in the NHL. Like, guys are younger. You're always hanging out with each other. There's not as much pressure or media or any, when in the NHL, a lot of the guys are a little bit older. They have their families. They have their routines when they're up. So you don't see them much unless you're on the road, really. And guys are making so much money. And so, if you're a bubble guy, you're not playing that much. So you're frustrated. You're not playing. No matter how much money you're making or what you're doing, you want to play the game. So if I wasn't going to play in Tampa, I'd rather be in Syracuse, enjoying my time with some, and Tampa does a great job with getting character guys. So there's always good guys in Syracuse. It seems like to me, there are always character guys there. I think they do a really good job with that. So it's more fun. I mean, I had a blast that year. I didn't see my family, so it was tough, but like hockey wise, it was one of the most fun years I've had.
Yeah. Leadership like that. It's important, but like you have to get along as a team to go far. Every successful team I've been on has been like that. And like we talked about earlier, how we would just, we'd have fun afterwards, but like the pressures of the NHL is very, very different. Like Erik said, like you every day you're facing media. It's a little bit lax in the American League. And that's not to say that there's not pressure there, because like if you don't get established in the American League as at least a very good player or an NHL prospect, like you won't last long there either. So there's still pressure, but you do spend so much time with your friends on the road in your home cities in the exact same way, more so than the NHL. And like, to me, like a lot of my closest hockey friends are people from the American League during those years. I never made an NHL team out of camp and spent a full year there. So, I don't have a lot of those phone numbers in the Rolodex like I did my American League teams, So like looking at these guys, like we all still talk, like a couple years later, and that's the fun part of it.
Yeah. And the other part of it, and Matt, like I mentioned this a moment ago, like we were there for the run in 2013, and that was the first year for everybody in Syracuse. I mean, you and I were new to the Lightning organization, having been with the Devils, but all those guys that had been in Norfolk, it was their first season in Syracuse, and going to go all the way to the final. Corey Conacher had left that team, at the trade deadline, the trade with Ottawa, Ben Bishop. So it was, in terms
I think we all went through Ottawa besides Tao, man.
Everyone's made a stop in Ottawa.
Hey,
you did. You went to bingo. We all did. We all hit that team.
But like it's like, to me, it's sort of interesting that in just 5 years, how much different the 2017 club was compared to the 2013 club. We think of 2 appearances in the Calder Cup Finals in the span of 5 years, but Matt, like that, like you're the only guy who was there for both of them.
Sometimes don't remind me because I keep seeing the losses, but no, I mean, yeah, that team in 2013 was special too, because like you said, they did win it the year before, and not many guys changed, and that was the year of the lockout too. So there was good hockey for a while until it opened up again. But it still was good hockey. Don't get me wrong, but like it different caliber for a while. But yeah, and you can see most of those guys are still playing. They're up in, you got Kaloran, Barberio, all the, some of those guys are still there, Johnny, Palat. So it was a good team. And, with we had a lot of success in those playoffs every round, right away up until the finals. So we ran through teams. We had a lot of fun, and it reminds me of this 2017 team a little bit, because we did the exact same thing. We were having fun, you're partying after all the wins. So, and it was just really, really close. So that, and like Mike said, that's why everything's so much more fun and so much more successful when everybody's together.
The other unfortunate, similarity between the way those two Calder Cup championship series ended was, like, I remember thinking about it at the time. In 2013, Syracuse was without Radko Gudas because of an injury. And in 2017, Syracuse was without Erik Condra. Erik, would you play the first two games of the final?
I did, yeah. I played 2 games, and then that second one was that triple overtime game, and we ended up losing in Grand Rapids, and my leg was twitching all night long. I woke up the next day, and I couldn't go on my calf. Like, my whole right side had shut down, and I obviously needed surgery after that. But
I couldn't believe you even made it through the first couple rounds in those first 2 games. Like, in that locker room, we all knew you were hurting, and you just kept absolutely gritting it through it, man. It was unbelievable.
Scoring too. I mean, like, you were like productive. You were playing, like, who was on your line at that point? Yeah, Pekka was with you, I think.
Pekka and McGinn was our line.
Yeah, and big goals.
It was the Conacher Gord line that was tearing it up. Those were our 2 top lines. We were doing well.
Yeah. And you weren't the only guy that was hurt either. Like, Tal, you were battling stuff the whole time too. Like, I yanked a groin in the middle of it. Like, when you get to playoffs, man, people sacrifice. Like, when you can taste that you're that close, you'll do just about anything to stay in the lineup.
Well, Cons and I, we were on the table with Poppy for hours at a time every single day. And then sometimes he'd make special trips just to, like, help us out, because we were in that much pain or just trying to get through.
And we talk about
for another week or something like that,
Yeah. You talk about reinforcements, with Tampa not being in the playoffs. You think about the players that you might get. You don't necessarily think about the massage therapist, but like that was I'm sure a mighty important bit of reinforcement for you guys.
Yeah, I've never had acupuncture before, and I got it in my groin. What a feeling when they hook that up to the electrodes. Wow.
Oh yeah.
That's great.
He's obviously one of the best, and credit to Tampa again too. They they put effort into their minors because you want your prospects to learn how to win, and they put money and they put effort into it. And sending Poppy down, who's the massage therapist, he's the everything man up there. He saved us a couple rounds, I think.
Totally agree.
I would have made it to the finals without him.
Yeah. Magic hands.
Oh yeah.
He's an absolute wizard. So you guys remember though, like in the first round, we were really close to not getting out of that. Like, we scored 2 goals.
Times outplayed us the first 2 games.
Yeah, but was it game 2? I think it was game 2. We scored 2 goals with me out of the net.
Yeah, and then wait, did I scored in?
You had one of them.
Overtime or was it was overtime because they scored they thought they scored.
Right, 2 goals.
And I scored, and Dumont was in front of the net, and somehow he didn't touch the goalie, but
it just
biased, but
it sticks out to me because it just, like, our team was stacked, and coming in from another team, like, there were expectations, and that made me nervous. But, like, to get through that first round wasn't easy. Like, we were right on the brink, but it never felt like anybody was panicking. It just felt like we got this.
Here's my show and tell here. This is St. John's newspaper going into that series. Can stability equal playoff ability? There's Yanni Gord there on the newspaper. And, you have to remember that the St. John's folks knew that whenever their postseason was over, it was going to be the end of the Ice Caps. It was going to be their last series. So, and I listened actually today to an interview I did with Ben Grew during that series, and said that, we weren't playing to our identity. And that first game, St. John's won. The second game, we were behind. It was, like you said, it was 3-1. And you said, we thought St. John's had won the game even after we came back, but they reviewed it. Right, Mike? Like, the puck was, like, right behind you, but it didn't go in. The referee never signaled that it went in. The replay, they went to the replay, the overhead cameras, they said no goal. Yep. And then then we thought we won, right? When you talked about the goal from you, Matt, they waved that off.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, talk about, like, and this ends up being the last home game in St. John's Ice Caps history, right? Yeah. Because a little bit later, and I tell you, Matt, that goal that wanted to tie scored was, I don't get caught off guard too often. Like, when you're high above the rink, you can kind of see what's going on. Great view in St. John's. But when you wound up to shoot, I thought you were shooting, right? You weren't shooting. Ty was all by himself at the left side of the net, and I didn't even see him. Nobody saw him except for you, and there he was to put it right in. And I have never been so caught off guard by a goal.
Which is weird for you to say that, because honestly, that was probably the only thing that I was going to do is go to him, because I picked my head, picked my head up, and he was coming out of the corner by himself. I was just hoping, because he was with a stick, right? So I was waiting.
I think he had dropped his stick in the corner or something, right?
Yeah, he's out of the play.
Replay. waiting, and then he's looking wide open. So and Lindgren was so far out that it was just happened for him. I was just hoping he didn't.
It's worth mentioning with Ty, because I think he had such a great postseason, but I think one of the things that we kind of forgot over the course of the 2 months in the playoffs, Ty had missed most of the regular season. He got hurt. It was in Rochester. I don't know. It was the second game of the year.
Yeah.
Right. Like the first handful of games of this season, had a bad injury, went down awkwardly in front of the Rochester net and hurt his shoulder. And I remember talking to Ty about, it could be a lost season. I said, hey, Ty, if you get back, this team can go far. And he, to his credit, he worked his ass off, and he got back for the last, I don't know, however many games at the end of the
15 games or so.
Yeah, it was like a goal per game going into the playoffs. He's not just back; he's back with a force, and was just tremendous through that whole postseason.
It's unfortunate for him too, because he went back-to-back Calder's and didn't, same thing, with.
Yeah,
Mike too. So
he's in the same boat as myself. Twice the bridesmaid.
So. Right. Yeah. Got to see him with the Chicago Wolves. We even, the Golden Knights, getting to the Stanley Cup Finals the first year, but then a couple years later, the Golden Knights, of course, had been knocked out. So my radio partner Gary Lawless and I went down to San Diego for the Chicago Wolves against the San Diego Gulls and called, Chicago Wolves hockey, and there's time again, and was great in that series with some Golden Knights prospects. And just to talk with, in the Golden Knights organization, Cody Glass is kind of the star prospect who's been coming up, and Cody has been raving about what Ty McGinn has done for him in the minors. And I think there's some similarity there between the Golden Knights organization and the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. Just the value in the minor league players, what it means to win at the minor league level, to have those resources. And the guys care. I'm putting words in the mouth of three hockey players. I'm just the guy who talks. But
you care a lot, Dan. You care more than anybody I've ever met. And Mike Tirico loves you for it.
Well, thank you. That's kind of you to say. But you guys really cared about doing well. And you cared about your younger teammates who are maybe in their first few years as pros.
100%, man. Think about how, when you think of a Ty McGinn and any of us that are on this right now, or other players that have been around the league for so long, you have so much that you can teach, the experiences you've been through. And Ty McGinn missing almost the whole season and coming back and being right on pace like that. You're mentally strong if you do that, and you're hungry, and that. I think about though that I know I'm kind of going back to the first round here though, but we had that big wave of guys come back from Tampa, right? I'm trying to think everybody, Dachin and Gordo and
four guys, I think.
There was a lot that came back.
Dumont, Gord, Doc.
That's right.
Here's your game one lineup.
See the notes, I'm saying. So it took us that series though to kind of it took us that series to kind of gel again though. To kind of get back in the swing of things as a team, it felt like, because that next round against Toronto was that was a pretty wicked round, man. 7-gamer like that. But that's kind of where we hit our stride as a team.
Yeah. But even just the thought of when, like you said, at that first round, losing the first game, I remember we were out to dinner after the first game. And because it's a best of 5 series, you're thinking, well, I think you and I, Matt, were talking about if we don't win tomorrow, that could be it. We'd go home back to Syracuse and you'd have to win 3 in a row or you're done. And that's, craziness when you're talking about a best of 5 series at that point. I mean, it's it came down to game 2 and then you're losing by 2 goals late in game 2. It could have been over.
It's funny. I've seen it before. Like the year I won the Calder Cup in 2011, the exact same thing happened. I was at that time I was one of those prospects that long ago, and I was one of the guys that came down from the NHL. And I remember when these guys came down in from Tampa right before playoffs, and I said, like, hey, it's not going to be as easy as you think it is. Like, just because you played in the NHL does not make you coming down here make it an easy game. It's almost harder sometimes. And we struggled in the first round. The year we won it, we actually was a best of 7 back then. And we were down 3-1 to Manchester and ended up coming back and winning it in game 7. And the same thing happened. Like, these guys come down and they think it's going to be easy, and they think they're NHL players, and it takes a little bit of time for them to be humbled a little bit and say, hey, this is a hard game. Like, I got to play again, and I got to play a role that, maybe I'm not an all-star in the AHL just because I played in the NHL. So I think that's what happened. And like you said, it takes a round or so. And if you can survive that and you come together, we had some really good hockey players.
And then you had a 7-game series, like Toronto, like that, that was, I should probably remember this. Maybe Lukas, you could help me out, but like game 7 wins at the War Memorial over the years. Isn't there some history related to that?
There is. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think it was the first time in like,
let's see,
the 40s or the 50s, like 60s, whatever it was.
That's your yellow folder.
Duve comes with receipts. Always.
I got a folder. For
always got receipts.
Get the game 7 chart out.
Red, this St. John's round 1. Here's Toronto round 2, and then Providence round 3. And yes, there's another folder over there for the final round.
This is all going to the Smithsonian when he's done.
Well, you talk amongst yourselves, and I'll see if
Dude, if you're looking up things, what was our home record that playoff too? We didn't lose many at home.
You lost. No. I think it was just the one game in the finals you lost. I think you were unbeaten until
we were
finals.
Undefeated at home. Yeah. The War Memorial was bumping. Like, we couldn't lose. Could we lose there? It was impossible.
No. It's the loudest rink I ever played in. Like, it was louder than Motorhead. I think we hit 118 decibels, which is like, that's like standing out on a runway as a 747 goes by. It was stupid.
And I'll tell you, just like people have talked about T-Mobile Arena now, like, and it's how it's wild as an NHL building. And among NHL buildings, there's not another scene like it, but it is big. It's a modern arena. There's nothing like an arena that's, what did War Memorial open in 51, built and started construction in 47. So
Slapshot was filmed in 76, maybe.
Right. So it's just, whether it's the size of it, the airplane hangar style roof, whatever it is, and of course, credit to the fans themselves. I mean, what is it still 6,099, Lukas? Is that still the capacity, or is it updated?
Well, the suites it's 6,110, I think, is the number these days.
There you go. Because it had been higher, but they took a section out of the corner where the Zambonis were coming in and out. They realized that every time the Zambonis went off the ice, it was affecting the humidity in the building. So they said, well, you can't open that garage door, so we'll keep the garage door closed, but to turn the Zambonis around, you had to take out a section. And then remember, they extended the ice, which took out more seats. So for a building that is that old, it's had some pretty neat updates over the years.
But then they kept adding seating during playoffs, though.
Oh my God!
Remember, like the stage, which by the way is hilarious that it's a stage, And my favorite part of the War Memorial is probably the American flags with the fans blowing on them for the anthem.
Right. That's classic.
That's like, that's so analog. It's amazing. But like we put up like bleachers, it was like a high school gym behind the one net. Like, we were cramming people in. It was amazing.
So even though this fixed seating capacity might have been like 6,099, I think at least one of those games, it was like over 6,700.
Yeah, it was awesome.
The records on that, but it's just amazing, like how much of a response there was, throughout that postseason for those home games.
Well, and we felt it. Like, we did it again in that series. Game 7, we were down by 2 goals. I think we were down 3-1. And I remember thinking, like, I've blown it. Like, I can't even imagine whether they were good or bad goals, but I just remember thinking, we're down 3-1.
No,
What's
just kidding.
yeah,
We're all thinking that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, geez, so McKenna. And I'm thinking this is it. I blew another. And then, like, the boys came roaring back, and I had the easiest third period maybe in my career. Like, I think I had like 4 shots in the third. And, it was the moment we scored in the second period to make it like 3-2 that you could just feel it. Like, we weren't losing. Like, and that's how it felt that whole time.
Yeah,
Was
well,
that
you
like
tied
right
it.
before the period ended?
It was 3-3 after the second, and
Yes.
then Matthew Pekka scores, I think, 8 seconds into the third period to give you a 4-3 lead, and like you said, that was it.
Yeah, and we just rolled. Like, we scored 2 more after that, hardly any shots, and then we just crushed Providence.
Yeah.
Like, they were out of juice. I can't remember who they played in the round before us, but they
went Hershey to 7, I think, and then
it must have been a war because we steamrolled them.
the fans were chanting, "We want Subban," weren't they chanting that? We had 7 up.
You're right. On McIntyre.
On McIntyre, and everyone was chanting, "We want Subban," and we got him the next game, and just it didn't go so well.
Yeah, and Subban played the last game of that series, and
played really well that game too. That was a 2-1 game, I believe. Yeah,
exactly right. And Syracuse scored late. Was it Conacher? I think it was Conacher who scored that go-ahead goal. And then the funny thing that we've talked about a few times, where, you know, as we know, Malcolm Subban ended up getting acquired by the Golden Knights the next year from the Bruins organization when they placed him on waivers to send him down. The Golden Knights goalie coach, Dave Pryor, was at that game in Syracuse and watched Malcolm Subban play, sort of scouting potential goalies for the Knights organization. And while Malcolm and Dave are no longer with the Golden Knights, you know, that very much impacted how things unfolded here in Las Vegas. But yeah, Malcolm was great in that particular game, but he had been the backup. Kevin Dean was the coach, and Kevin's now an assistant with the Boston Bruins. And I know Kevin and Matt, you do too, from, you know, the Devils days.
We were with him in Lowell together,
right?
Awesome guy.
Great guy, you know, from Wisconsin and all that. Played at Wisconsin, from Massachusetts. And I remember talking to him, like, he was at his wit's end. Like, he just knew his team was just battered, and they just were going to need something heroic. And that was why they put Subban in. And even that wasn't good enough to stop you guys.
Yeah. And then we go to GR, and it didn't work out as well for us.
Man, that series, I've said this a couple times recently, is it feels like everybody's kind of reliving things in the quarantine. We had nothing else to do a lot, right? But thank you, Doof. Another receipt. Fantastic. I still think that game 2, if Lynchy's shot goes in, like, remember that unbelievable toe save Coreau made on him in overtime?
Yeah.
If that puck goes in game 2, we win. Like, no question in my mind. Well, like, no doubt about it. We go back to Syracuse 1-1. Like, we could have run the table. Like,
even game 1, who took a penalty with 3 men with 30 seconds left or something, right? Wasn't it Gord and somebody?
Oh yeah, it was
game 1 or game 2.
Yeah, and Dodge ran over somebody at some point too.
Yeah, I'm okay with that one. But
we killed a guy.
30 seconds left. We took a penalty and they scored with 18 seconds left.
Right.
Something to win it. In game 1, maybe? Didn't they score in the last minute to win it in game 1?
Yeah.
And then we won in triple overtime in game 2, or double or triple overtime.
Because the first 2 games were really wild in that series. That's what happens, like, when you have teams from the East and West that have never played each other. Like, they can end up being here's the game sheet there. They can end up being complete, you know, shootouts, right? 6-5, 5-4 games. And then by the 3rd and 4th game, it kind of got back to normal hockey for us. But man, that just
didn't Cirelli ended up coming in and playing in that series. Was he in game 1, Duve, or was he after I got hurt? He played maybe.
Yeah, this is the lineup from game 6, and so Cirelli was playing with Ernie and Walcott. But I remember remember Brett Howden had played earlier in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yep.
At this point, because Mitchell Stevens was like all these black aces, guys who of course have gone on and done quite well, but it was
30 guys there.
For Ben
it was a big camp.
Yeah, like which of these guys were going to get in? Because as you talked about earlier, you had guys coming down from Tampa. You know, like Bourneval got healthy, McGinn got healthy, Dumont comes down. You know, Fraze had been acquired from the Toronto organization, and so all of a sudden you had this, pardon the pun, crunch of players to try to fit into this lineup of 12 forwards. Yeah, wow. Just looking over some of these this lineup, boy, could not have been easy to figure out who to scratch in some of these games. But, we've seen what Anthony Cirelli has done. And Cirelli was, I don't remember how many points he had, if any, but like he just was close, right? He just couldn't catch a break in those handful of games that he did play. But a hell of a way to break into the pros, right? In the middle of the Calder Cup finals.
Yeah. Well, like Erik, think about your run with Syracuse and your run with Binghamton, though. How much did the young players learn from that? And how many of them moved on to the next level that much quicker because of that run?
Yeah, I think I said it. You go on runs and you are part of a winning culture, and guys develop so much better because of it. And long playoff runs are huge into that.
What was the round that we found out some fan called Gourd Pumpkin? Was that in St. John's?
I think it was the first one.
St. John's.
I think it was. Yeah.
I wish he would have embraced that nickname. He didn't like it, so I had to let it go. But man,
he can get sensitive sometimes.
Somebody on social media called him an effing pumpkin, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And he didn't
get it at first. Right?
No, I mean there was a bit of a translation thing.
We had to explain it to him, I think.
Yeah. Oh man, it was too perfect. But if somebody doesn't like it, you can't really hang on to it. So we had to let it go.
So I ended up playing with Colin Campbell and Dan Renouf, who were both on Grand Rapids. So obviously they bring that this series up quite a bit, and like this, because Dan Renouf went back-to-back championships. He won it in Grand Rapids, and then he was with Charlotte last year. But so he got his ring, and they were talking about it, whatever. But both of them said, I don't think we should have won that series. Like, we scored late in game one to win. We scored in double, triple overtime, and then we came to Syracuse and just got, crushed for 2 games. Snuck one out, and then they won in game 6 at home. You know what I mean? Like, they're obviously happy they did, but they didn't think they deserved to win it.
That's why it stung so much.
Yeah.
Like it just, that was a really even series in a lot of ways, but it felt like we should have won that too. Like, we had the horses, and it just, for whatever reason, we couldn't get across the finish line.
Yep.
Well, then that's the difference between the 13 and the 17, because we thought actually we were probably going to play Oklahoma City, because the Grand Rapids or Detroit just got knocked out. Then like the Kaiser, Nyquist, Tatar, all those guys came down. And Yurko was their best player pretty much the entire playoffs. He was the best player. But then once they came down, it was completely different. It was probably a completely different situation. But then with the 2017, I thought we were the better team by far. And whatever happens. And like you said, it's playoffs. It comes down to it's the best of 7, and we just didn't come out with it. But that's why you have to play all the way to the end, and it's completely different game compared to the regular season and other times. So I just that's why it does hurt so much more. Even though it was my second time, but Condra's won one, he's lost one. McKenna, we both lost 2. So no matter what, it both hurts just because you were there twice at least. But that one was a little more hurtful.
In the same instance, though, like, even being able to play at that stage is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can't watch highlights from that Grand Rapids series and not feel physically hurt, but I also feel really proud that we were there and that we got to play at that stage. We were the last game being played on earth for that season, and like, that the whole team has to play that well to get there. And on a personal level, you have to also. But man, it just sucks to see that thing get lifted when you think you should have had it, Well,
I saw on Instagram the very first time they were throwing out, we're going to watch Calder Cup Finals games, and it was ours. Like the first that we were playing, it was ours. Like, oh, yeah, I got to relate with this one if I'm going to see it. So,
if I'm not mistaken, and I'm pretty sure this is right, but maybe somebody else can correct me. So we had, whereas in the first year to Grand Rapids, we had sleeper buses out to Michigan, whereas in 2017, we had a charter flight, which was great. But what I remember being told was that the flight back to Grand Rapids, that airplane had just brought the victorious Pittsburgh Penguins from Nashville to Pittsburgh with the Stanley Cup. And the next voyage for that airplane was to take us from Syracuse to Grand Rapids. And I kind of like, that seems too wild to believe, but I'm pretty sure that that's right. And I guess it wasn't a good enough omen. And I think one of the strangest things was getting, after we lost that last game, we flew out that night. We went back to the hotel and had to pack up. We had, guys had families there.
That was a tough one for us.
To go, and that I don't think I've ever done before. Whereas like in like 2013, Matt, like the first round in Portland, we won the series, but then we stayed the night. Like in this case, because we had the plane, well, you might as well just check out of the hotel. I don't remember ever doing that at any level where you play a game, you go to the hotel, check out, and then leave. Like that was just bizarre. And then you get back to Syracuse at whatever time in the morning it was. And, everybody got together, that sort of thing. But that was it. That was just a weird way for it to all kind of wrap up.
Yeah. Do you remember the rigmarole we had to go through to get all the wives and kids out there?
Oh man,
they drove.
Yeah, your wife and mine carpool. Yeah, they drove. They carpooled together all the way out there.
Our youngest daughter was like 2.
Yeah.
And she screamed for about 9 of the 10 or 11 hours or whatever it was the whole way through a border crossing twice.
Yeah.
Oh man. And then we get there because they wanted to be there if we won, and we lose the thing. And of course we're thinking, okay, well, we're at least going to go back to the hotel and just decompress, and you you get over that bitterness, and usually you go back and you maybe have a couple drinks, or maybe you just sit around and talk. We were on the plane and we were gone, and it was over. And it was just like, that was part of why it stung so bad too. Cause it was just like, see you later. That's it. It was tough sledding.
Yeah. And I remember, between the time that we landed and guys went home, and then we kind of all got back together again, and different, beards had been shaved off in different ways. I think I waited until the next day to ditch the playoff beard, but
it grew back by the day after that, dude.
Yeah. But I can picture like Michael Borneval, like with this very strange looking facial hair that probably only lasted for a few hours. There you go.
Man, look at that thing. Beautiful.
Well, that's never going to happen again. This is as long as it's going to go. But no, like I think that's helpful, because then the next day, like, all the folks from the front office, were there, and, you're kind of going through those goodbyes, and, the equipment, the signing autographs that you guys go through, and then it's, pack it up. And it's, that's one of the hardest things, because no matter what, like that group of guys is never going to be together in the same way as you were, that night. And I can only imagine what it's like when you walk away with a trophy, and then it probably lingers for a few more days to celebrate. But, it's still, I just remember thinking, because I left Syracuse that next day. I remember being in the car and just thinking about, wow, I can't believe that group of guys isn't going to be together again. Because it was, to me, I just thought was one of just a really special group of people. Even though like not everybody had been together for terribly long, like you two, like Erik and Mike, like you guys had not been on the Crunch until that season. But I just remember really enjoying so many guys, whether it was the young guys, veteran guys. And I just remember thinking, boy, that group is not going to be together ever again.
Yeah. Years like that, though, those are the guys that you stay in touch with, and those are the guys that you stay friends with, really. Yeah. The years that you make runs, or those become your closest friends.
I mean, think about me. I showed up, a trade deadline, but I was talking about this with my wife the other day. It was like, we were there for 4 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost a full season's worth of hockey, and by the end of it, it felt like that. And I'd never been traded before. So like I played on countless teams and been called up and down, but I'd never gotten dealt. So like,
I just magic for you or what?
I just like, It felt really good to be welcomed like that right away, though, and for us to have a chance to do things early too. Like I still have pictures come up from the Easter party we had at your place, Eric. Like, the kids are all out getting Easter eggs and
just the Easter one.
Well, yeah, you're right. Well, I also think that your wife might have been kind of behind the Jello shot eggs, I think, at one point. But
hopefully the kids weren't getting the ones with Jello shots in them.
Yeah.
It's anybody's guess. It's a guess.
It slept well that night.
Yeah.
I mean, ironic. I mean, even after that too, like you're saying, I got home, and the next weekend was my bachelor party, and then the next weekend was my wedding. Right. So like it was crazy. And ironically, we all, Eric, Mike, and I, we all have the same wedding anniversary.
Yeah. It's the universal hockey wedding day.
Yeah, so it was crazy. And you're on your honeymoon, and then the season's starting up like a month later. So
free agency, it's like you turn the corner, it's free agency.
Next day was free agency,
right? Yeah. That happened to me. Like, it was the same thing when I was in Texas the following year. We finished up. I go to the union meetings for the PHPA in Florida, and I come back from that to Texas to pack the place up. And it was like free agency 3 days later. And I'm just like, my head's spinning. It's like, I don't know what to do right now. And yeah, it happens quick when you play until June 13th or 14th.
Well, this has been great stuff. I have not seen. We've had a lot of comments on Facebook. They've all been very positive, but no questions coming your way.
No questions.
No questions.
What?
Well, Daniel Walcott is here on the chat as always. So
good.
He's been
add him on the call. He wants to get on the call. Can you add him on the call?
Put him in. Let's go.
I should have got Luke Witowski. He lives a mile and a half down the road.
That's right.
He's shoveling your driveway.
Send that relic a Zoom invite, man. Send it over to Wally.
How many seasons has Daniel been with the Syracuse Crunch?
This is, I think, now 5 years he's been here.
Has he figured out what position he plays yet?
Well, he was a forward this year, although he did play a game or two on the back end, but he had to. But yeah, he is all in on the forward now, which is pretty good.
Well, that's great. I tell you, and I'm sure it's no surprise. I mean, the people that are following the Crunch, the fans there, I think that we knew pretty quickly when Daniel got to the Crunch that he was going to be a fan favorite. All the videos, that the staff would produce, the different appearances, is there who's somebody that the fans would love more than Daniel Walcott? Like, he just does everything on the ice.
I mean, the only person that loves Daniel Walcott more is Daniel Walcott.
That's exactly right. Yep.
And then he's been a multiple-time Man of the Year, too, in Syracuse, too, so he does it all. I mean, he's great in the community, and that's, I think, what the biggest part of all of it. And he's confirming it will be year number 6 coming up because he did re-sign again this year. So he's got year number 6 coming up, which would be, at the very moment, only one player in franchise history has appeared in 6 different seasons for the Crunch. Dan, I don't know if you know the answer to this one or not. It's someone from the Lightning affiliation era who's played now in 6 seasons, parts of 6 seasons with the Crunch.
I mean, would it be Corey Conacher?
It's not Corey Conacher.
It's close. I mean, I know he left.
Oh, here we go.
What's is happening?
Yanni Gord?
Uh-oh. No, not Yanni Gord.
There he is.
Gentlemen.
Yes.
Oh, my word.
Oh, this is perfect.
Wait, I'm not 1% here. Give me a second.
Plug that in, Relic. Let's get on here.
Ask and you shall receive. You know I'm not too far away.
How about, was it an NSYNC or a Backstreet Boy video you guys did that year? All I can think of is Cuckoo with like the upside down visor.
You are right. T was
you were in it too. Yeah,
T was in it.
Yeah, Terrell was in it.
That was one of the funniest videos ever.
Right? Ty was in it. That was the best one I thought of all the lip sync videos. We had some good ones. That was the best one.
That's the one we really went all out for, though.
Oh, all right.
We got the costumes, everything.
Yeah,
we were
white T-shirts.
Yeah.
Nothing can top that one. Nothing. Wait, could we talk about BG still owing me about 3 minutes of ice time in Game 6 in Grand Rapids, please?
The floor is yours. We've talked enough.
Yeah. He came in before the game. I don't know if you guys remember. before the game, BG walks in, pregame speech, and he goes, "Wally, this is going to be the best 8 minutes of hockey in your entire career." And I was fired up. I'm like, 8 minutes? That's a lot. Like, I don't think I played 8 minutes all year. And I mean, after the second period, I don't think I saw the ice. I looked at it, but my feet never touched it.
You had a decent 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 was even 5 was generous. I think I might have got
Well, Wally is all about a bits.
How about the T-shirts that year?
Bits. Yeah. What else was on the tagline on those?
Play gritty.
Play gritty.
I don't know. There's a lot of.
I think I'm a shirt.
Play Evie.
Evie. Wally, do you remember what the piece of PVC that looked like a toilet paper roll you had to have on your stick while you were rehabbing?
Yeah, I was sniping with that. I think I should bring it.
So he's coming back from injury, and they rigged this thing up for him because it was your wrist, right? I think
it was I broke my arm, forearm.
So he can't grip the stick properly, but he can kind of hold this like PVC pipe that was put over his stick, kind of like a toilet paper roll holder. And he's flying around with this thing, and he actually shoot the puck pretty well with it. Like, I thought you were going to suit up for a game with it.
It's all in the top hand. Even I had Erik on it for a couple of sessions. He came to the Wally D School of Shooting.
The guy you want to learn from.
There it is.
There it is. All about a bit.
Katie coming in big with the delivery.
Yes. Thank you, Katie. Beautiful.
There you go, Katie. That's great.
Play gritty.
All of them. That's why.
Evie. Jump.
Jump. Evie.
Wally, what's going on in your world these days? Let's let the Syracuse fans hear what's going on.
So I came back to Montreal, and this is my last day of mandatory quarantine. They've been keeping an eye on me. So tomorrow I'm free. The world will be able to have Wally D amongst them again.
Not anymore.
God.
What an honor for Montreal.
So hitting the links every day of the week.
Nice.
First summer I'm a member, so I'm kind of fired up about it.
Big time.
And then we'll see what happens with the NHL.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about this. Like, do you remember after we beat Toronto, you showed up at the apartment I was in, and we had to move that whole place at like 7:00. You were an absolute warrior for our family. I will never, ever forget that, or never stop being thankful for you showing up and making that happen.
I still have that Wegmans gift card.
Good.
Reminds me of that year.
Yeah. I think you also have our humidifier. It's somewhere buried in the back of that pickup, but that's okay. We'll chalk that up.
No, I don't think that was a tough day, the tough morning for me too. But yeah, you battled. 2 kids running around. We actually did pretty quick. I think it was a half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, man. Legit. If you hadn't shown up, I was in one. Like, I may not have made the bus.
That's why they keep signing Wally back. What a guy.
Yeah.
The parties at Condra's. Can we talk about those?
We touched on them. Continue on. The wiffle ball.
Further now, or what? Are we allowed to talk about those?
Every time we went around, I had all the boys over to my house out in Baldwinville, and we celebrated the victory of that round.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Wiffle balls going all over the place.
Spike ball.
Spike ball got vicious. I can't believe we didn't hurt ourselves. It was fun.
Yeah.
Daniel, do you know the answer to the Lucas's trivia question there?
What is it? I don't think I was on at that point.
Only player in Crunch history who has already, you said you're coming up on your 6th season next year, but only one player has appeared in a game in 6 different seasons for the Syracuse Crunch. Someone just finally got the answer on Facebook, so no cheating.
6 years.
And he's a player during the Lightning affiliation, too.
I mean, Matt, no. Were you? You did 2 stints. Corey Conacher did a couple stints.
He's at 5 years right now.
Barberio?
No, someone that was with 2 organizations, right?
No, all with the Lightning.
Mike Angelidis?
No, that's a good guess.
All throughout both teams.
Luke? Lukey Witkowski.
That's the one, Luke Witkowski.
First thought, but then I'm like, I don't want to say him. I don't want to give him that credit.
I was going to say Joey Mormina, but he only had a couple.
Yeah. I remember Luke coming to Grand Rapids in 2013. He wasn't with the team, but he's a Michigan guy, so he was there, but he wasn't like with the team. But,
yeah, he was sober in the stands.
Well, he was a black ace for a little bit. Well, he was with us.
Yeah.
He did play in a couple games in the regular season that year.
Right.
Yeah. And then we also had a lot of guys there too, like for black acing and stuff. I think there's 12 guys or something like that. I thought there's a whole separate room for those guys.
Right.
Back then.
Yeah, and then it was because Tampa had made it, so many guys were down from the NHL. That was the strike shortened season, so there were a lot of
a lockout. Dan, don't do this. It's a lockout.
What did I say?
You said strike.
Right.
You can't say that.
I got my PHPA hat just over there. Don't want to upset anybody. No, that was like I still remember when the lockout ended. We were in Norfolk, I think. And it was strange because like you didn't know what was going to happen. Like the NHL was got the training camp and all those sorts of things. And how many guys went up, but then how many would come back, and then how many came back later. But no, that made the 2013 season a little crazier than it ended up being with 2017. It felt like like you guys were saying earlier, it's like you kind of knew the team that you had. In 2017, which was why, Daniel, we were talking earlier about, like the way that you guys felt going into the finals and, throughout that postseason felt pretty good. Right? What do you remember about those playoffs?
Well, I mean, I got a late start to them. I started in Toronto series because I was coming back from the broken arm.
Right.
Then we had the Providence series where in game 2, I had my shoulder pop out. And then the magic work of Christian Poppy Rivas.
Poppy's been discussed at length here.
he put it back together for the finals where Condra allowed me to. I mean, it was unfortunate he went out, but then you know how it works. Some players get a shot. Yeah. And I was happy I got to play in the Calder Cup finals in that, especially at the War Memorial. It was crazy. That game 5. Like when we score, like Doomy off the face-off just takes a slap shot. Lynchy drives down, hits past the front, Borney scores. It was like crazy. And then I think we had 5 goals in the first, and the place it's one of my like fondest hockey moments up to date. So, I mean, it was like you guys all said, it just sucks the way it ended, especially when we were like, we have the team. Like I didn't see us losing. And even when we lost, it was like, no, this still like, did we actually just, like you guys said, for game 1, it was a late goal. And then game 2, Joel Vermeen missed an open net. Lynchy got saved by Coro. And there's like that series was back and forth the whole time.
Remember how intense it was? Like Bertuzzi and Cons going after each other? Like
I had Bertuzzi and Callahan lean over at the War Memorial, lean over and like start punching me in the bench. I loved it because like that's what I do, but it was like we'd seen them once. That's it. And it was like we hated each other for years. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, this is, like I said earlier, this has been great. We've kept you for an hour. You've been very generous with your time. I don't know if you guys want to give maybe a final thought of that year or your time in Syracuse or whatever it might be. I mean, obviously, while you're still in Syracuse, so
bring Condra back.
There you go.
Hey, Matt, could you still play?
I don't know. We'll see.
His agent in the background.
You're the Tom Brady trying to get guys out of retirement, bring them back to the Syracuse. I'll play.
There you go.
Love it.
No, I just appreciated the time that I had there. I know I was there for roughly 4 years, and the memories that was created, and the people that I've met. We were there for so long or not so long, but we've created so many good friendships that a couple came to our wedding that were there. So it's just the city, and we've always had good teams. I've had great times there. Great, the staff, everybody was unbelievable there. So I just appreciate being there. And it was actually, spent almost half my career there. It was fun. So it's going to always be a good memory for me.
Yeah, for sure. You made big memories for the folks in Syracuse. Erik Condra, a final thought from you for whether it's that year or just your time in Syracuse?
Yeah, obviously, I think I said this at the beginning. I didn't expect to be in Syracuse. It wasn't my plans coming with the Tampa organization, but it ended up being almost rejuvenating my love for the game a little bit because we had some great young guys and great friends, and we played and we had a lot of fun. We went far, almost did it, and those are the years you remember. And some of these guys are still some of my really good buddies, and it was one of the best years I've had playing.
Excellent. Mike McKenna, we've seen your some of your thoughts on Twitter about playing in Syracuse, obviously, especially recently, some of the photos and whatnot, but a thought on the year and just your couple months in Syracuse.
I can't help but smile. It was so much fun. And I'd always listed Syracuse as one of my favorite rinks to play in on the road, if not my favorite. And part of that coincided with, for whatever reason, I always played well there. But I felt really grateful to have the chance to actually play for the Crunch, not with the visiting team, and that success kind of carried a bit. But we've talked a lot about the personal and the inter-room aspects of this, but we haven't said a whole lot really about how much the whole city was behind us. You couldn't walk down the street in downtown Syracuse without seeing the finish sign, with our team in every window front, and just the noise out of the War Memorial. It was unbelievable. And that's the stuff you really never forget. It's just how visceral it was, how loud and just feeling like you kind of had a whole city behind you was really cool. And I think that's something that's kind of special to some of the smaller size cities in the American League. So yeah, I was just really, really thankful I had a chance to play for the team and also to finally link up even with Howard and Vance, who I'd known from the meetings in Hilton Head for years and years. And then to finally get to play for them was really cool. So yeah, great memories.
Yeah, and made a big impact on the community for sure in your brief time in Syracuse. Daniel Walcott, like I said, we know you'll be around again next year, but if you want to give a thought on the team and where you are right now with the Crunch.
Well, I love Syracuse and that team especially, those years where we had, I know it's crazy that it doesn't sink in yet because I've only been once to the finals, but it's will I ever be a part of a team that good? And that year was really special to me of the years that, going through injuries and forward and D, but guys like Condra and the older guys, we had a really old team. And I remember that forward group, I think there was only me and Lynchy that hadn't played in the NHL at one point in their life. So it was a very, very talented team. And it's a good year. That was a good year for me. And I'm kind of sad that the boys are all gone and, they're moved on from the game because it's not the same, being the young guys is fun when you have veterans like that. So that's why I just try to do the same for the young guys coming in. So I thank them and you guys and Dan and Lukas as well.
Well, we look forward to year number 6 for you whenever the Crunch in the AHL and hockey gets going again.
Vote for Wally, mayor of Syracuse. Vote for Wally.
Yeah. Wally, I know I'm going to see you on this side of things in about a decade when you're done playing, so keep it up, brother.
10 years? Oh,
yeah, why not?
I don't know if my body's going to last that long.
Oh, you got it.
I'm still playing, bud. You can last.
Yeah, I'll be good. My shoulders. It's just my shoulders. I don't have any hands anyway, so.
Quit hitting guys.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, we'll get a final thought from you. You were here for 5 years, obviously, and a couple of cup runs. Final thoughts from you.
Are you sure you want to just give me the microphone like that? I might just hold on.
It is dangerous.
Yeah. No, listen, I have said, there it is. Now he's a pro. He's ready. Listen, I have had so many opportunities to talk about the time that I've been in Syracuse, and those of you who followed along with our broadcast, it was so fun to have the relationship with the Crunch fan, the Crunch listener, for those 5 seasons, to be part of 2 runs to the Calder Cup final. And I think, and whether he's calling the Crunch games or, high school football or baseball or doing the radio show or being back at SU. I mean, I've lived in Syracuse, New York for 9 years of my life. And it will always be a very special place. And I think right now, I mean, I was last in Syracuse last May. It was graduation time on campus. And so this is probably the longest I've ever been without setting foot in Syracuse since I first showed up there a long time ago. So I have a very special place in my heart for the Syracuse people, the city of Syracuse. But then, I'm glad that you guys mentioned, the folks in the office from Howard and Vance and Jim, and, obviously Lukas and Megan Cahill and, Maggie Walters was doing communications when I first got to the Crunch, but a lot of other people. And I'd feel terrible because I'll start leaving people out, but, Todd Cross and Mark Hayes, and I could go on and on and on with all the people who've been there. And that's, we talked earlier about how much you guys care. I mean, those people care about the Crunch, about the city, about the fans. And I'll get choked up if I talk about it too much because it is such a special place, and I miss it very much.
Well said, for sure. It's a good way to wrap things up. This has been great. Thank you again to all of you for joining us tonight. It was fun to go back down memory lane, I guess, for the 2016-17 season, and hopefully you all enjoyed reliving some of those memories and enjoyed chatting with that. So thanks for doing this, and stay safe, be well, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thanks like always, Lukas.
Thank you, everybody. That was great.
All right, see you, boys.
The recording has stopped.
Is that a wrap?
Yeah, Wally dipped out, man. He's a goner.
He doesn't know how this thing works.